Hello and welcome to this special broadcast. This is the 17th anniversary of 9/11. More than 2,000 American soldiers have lost their lives since the war began. More than 20,000 civilians have been killed in the last 10 years alone. Are we any closer to peace? And how critical is it for Afghanistan to stand on its feet economically? Joining us right now is the US Ambassador to Afghanistan, Mr. John Bass. Mr. Bass, thanks very much for speaking to CNBC TV.
Very good to be with you.
Mr. Bass, our first question. This is America's longest military engagement in history. Where do we stand today, and what's the roadmap for future?
Well, today is a solemn occasion, a day after September 11th, when we honor our dead. We think we're making important progress. Obviously, there's work that remains, but the work we're doing not only in Afghanistan, but here, importantly, in Mumbai, to support the development of Afghanistan's economy and to reconnect it to the wider region is a key part of what we believe will lead to success for Afghanistan and the region in the years to come.
Right. Ambassador Bass, you'll probably agree with me that it's very important to have a peaceful and secure Afghanistan in order to ensure economic prosperity. In the last 1 month, especially in August, we've seen a wave of terror strikes, and what we've seen is really unprecedented. Just yesterday, there was an attack outside Jalalabad where 68 people were killed. What do you think is the reason for this spike in violence? Is it the elections which are around the corner? Is it a call for ceasefire or the peace talks?
Well, it's a combination of factors. It's important to remember that the violence in Afghanistan is both part of the enduring conflict between the Taliban and the Afghan government, but also, and this is what accounts for many of the casualties, the tragic casualties this year, is suicide attacks by Daesh, primarily against Afghan civilians. And so, as we work to help strengthen the Afghan government's capacity to provide security and to provide opportunity for its citizens, we clearly continue to have some work to do to deal with the problem that Daesh creates, not just for Afghanistan, but for the wider region and all of us in the international community.
As you stress on tackling the ISIS, tackling the Taliban, fighting terror havens in Afghanistan and Pakistan, how crucial is it to make sure that Afghanistan is on the route to economic prosperity?
Well, it's a key part of what we believe is essential to any settlement and to, again, preventing the renewal of conflict in the future. As you know, Afghanistan's a fairly young society. It has a lot of young Afghans who have been born since 9/11 in 2001. With increasing internet penetration, those young Afghans have different expectations for what the future should bring for them, based on their ability to see what's happening in India, in other countries. And so it's imperative on the Afghan government, with the support of the United States and India and other countries, to help create the environment in which the private sector, importantly, can start to provide those opportunities to more Afghans.
If I ask you about the roadmap for the next 5 years, US aid has been working a lot on development work. They have fostered a lot of public-private partnerships, rooted investments in the region as well. What would be the roadmap for the next 5 years?
Well, what you're seeing, importantly here at this second annual Trade and Investment Show, is our shift from focusing on developing core capacity within the Afghan government to now helping the Afghan government improve transparency, create the important legal framework for business to be able to ensure a predictable investment climate so they know what the opportunities are, and to then start to build those connections to the wider global business community in ways that enable the enormous potential of Afghanistan to be untapped and unleashed. And clearly, as you see from the interest in this convention today, Afghanistan, notwithstanding the problems, is open for business.
Yes. What would be, if I ask you to put a number, the range of investments from the US side into Afghanistan in the coming years? And in which sectors?
Yeah. So I think what you're seeing now is the US private sector, which has principally been involved in providing support to the Afghan government, the US government, and allies in the counterterrorism effort, increasingly shifting to explore other opportunities, whether it's in partnership with Afghan partners, whether it's in partnership with Indian or other companies. And I think you're going to continue to see increased U.S. interest in helping Afghanistan build out its telecom infrastructure, in taking advantage of some of the opportunities in mining and minerals. Just this morning, a U.S.-Afghan company signed a new concession with the Afghan Ministry of Mines to explore a promising copper concession in western Afghanistan. I think you're also going to see American companies interested in helping Afghanistan improve its healthcare system, and also in continuing to develop private education.
Okay. How critical is India's role in empowering Afghanistan? There is a development partnership which has been going on for a decade now. India has been involved in a lot of infrastructure projects.
I think India has a really important role to play, just as many of Afghanistan's neighbors and friends do. You've noted there's already a very strong partnership. The Indian government and the Indian people's generosity has helped Afghanistan both improve key development indicators, but also it's been really important in helping it address humanitarian crises, such as the ongoing drought. I would anticipate going forward that the Indian business community is going to be an increasingly strong, vibrant presence in Afghanistan, based on the natural connections that historically existed between the two countries and the common geography, and the sense of shared opportunities that are there.
Recently, the Indian government had announced 116 high-impact projects for Afghanistan. But for the last couple of months, since the South Asia policy was revealed by the Trump administration, we have been seeing statements from the United States which urge the Indian government to do more. So what is the expectation exactly?
Well, primarily what we think India can provide is principally what Indian society, the Indian private sector, can provide, which is a degree of comparison and model for how different sectors in Afghanistan can develop based on your own experiences in scaling development within India. Trying to take an American model, if you will, and hand it to Afghanistan and say, you know, here's how you should address improving rural education, or in promoting better knowledge of the latest agricultural techniques to small farmers. That's not necessarily something that easily crosswalks from our society and experience, but clearly those are experiences and knowledge that's resident in this society and potentially can have a huge impact in Afghanistan.
Is there also an expectation for India to play a military role?
We certainly don't have that expectation in a significant way. There might be some opportunities for India to provide some training, professional military education, those kinds of things. But that would certainly be blended together with equivalent opportunities and contributions made by many other countries and partners.
India considers Chabahar, the Chabahar project, very crucial to empowering Afghanistan. And they have been urging the United States to grant India a waiver on this very consideration, that this project is very crucial for Afghanistan, and a strong India is in the best interest of the United States as well. So do you think a waiver can come on this ground?
Well, as you know, based on the conversations and summaries of the conversations that Secretary Pompeo and Secretary Mattis had with their counterparts here in India last week, this is a matter which is still under discussion between the two governments, and those discussions are informing our ongoing review of how we can address what we believe is a compelling policy need, which is to ensure that the reimposition of sanctions on Iran has the effect that we intend, which is to change their behavior, their very destabilizing behavior in the regions surrounding Iran. And so it remains under evaluation and discussion and consideration at this time.
General expectation is from allies in all countries to cut down imports from Iran to zero, be it India, be it Afghanistan. That would be the consideration.
Well, that's certainly the objective. How we get there, how quickly we get there, that's a matter of discussion between my government and various governments. But above all, we believe it's really important for every government to be showing a commitment to do so.
Shifting focus to the peace talks, there has been one round of peace talks. Where do you think this is going, and when can we expect the next round of talks between Taliban and U.S. negotiators?
Well, I don't think it's productive to comment on individual channels or rounds of talks. The issue, right, is how we can all contribute to producing the conversations between the Afghan government and the Taliban that are really essential to solving this conflict, to creating a settlement, and then to implementing a settlement in a way that will make it sustainable over time. We're not interested in a result that produces a short-term outcome that then fails and where we see violence resume thereafter. And I'm sure this is going to be a principal focus in the months ahead, as it has been. That's why Secretary Pompeo has asked my friend and colleague, Ambassador Khalilzad, with his enormous experience in the region, to come back and focus on how we can support the Afghan government's efforts to bring the conflict to a close.
Eventually, are we looking at a situation where we will have a Taliban sharing space in the government? The way it's going?
I think it depends on that conversation between the Afghan government, reflecting the views and wishes of the Afghan people and the Taliban. One of the things I have learned in my time in Afghanistan is that no one is going to impose a settlement on the Afghan people. And whatever outcome of a negotiation is achieved, it will have to make sense to the Afghan people and reflect the country in all its diversity and complexity.
And my last question, sir. In the Baghlan province, in the month of May, we had 7 Indians who went missing. Development, infrastructure development is very crucial, but also as peace and security. Do we know anything about those 7 Indians? Are US and India collaborating on trying to find them, rescue them in some way?
We're continuing to support the efforts of the Afghan government, along with the Indian government, to bring those Indians home, to ensure they are safe, and to try to ensure that incidents like this terrible kidnapping don't happen in the future.
Ambassador Baz, thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
CNBC
Great
TV
to talk to you.